Story 1. This was wild. I was picking up my partner, who has a disability, from the hospital where he had been staying for the last 2 weeks due to a life-threatening incident. His medical team told me not to worry about traveling up to the ward, as they would escort him down to the car with his belongings if I parked in one of the designated disabled spots. Perfect. I found a space as close to the ward as possible, displayed his disability parking badge clearly, and waited in the car. Then I heard a "excuse me." I popped my head out the window. A woman, probably in her 50s, had pulled up behind me. She asked me to move because she had her elderly mother, who also has a disability, with her and needed the space. I calmly explained that I was waiting for my partner, who is disabled, and that I also needed the spot. She responded, "Well, go wait somewhere else. I need this space. My mother is disabled, and you're not." I could have handled this more gracefully, but instead I chuckled, told her to leave me alone, pulled my head back into the car, and turned the radio up. That really set her off. She got out of her car, walked up to my window, and called me rude and unsympathetic. She accused me of misusing a disability badge and demanded I move immediately. I didn't feel any obligation to explain my personal situation to this entitled stranger. The past 2 weeks had been emotionally exhausting, filled with fear that I might lose my partner. I don't know why I did what I did next. Perhaps I was just done being polite, but I looked at her and said, "Smile," then took her picture. Oh boy. She was absolutely stunned. She quickly pulled out a card that said "Press" on it and told me that she worked for the media. She threatened legal action if I didn't delete the photo immediately. At that point, I was committed. I told her, "Nope, I think I'll keep it," and snapped another photo. She then began screaming for security. Everyone around was staring. She gave me a smug grin when security began walking over, as if to say, "You're in real trouble now." Security arrived. All they saw was a very angry, rather loud woman at my window and me sitting calmly inside my vehicle. She demanded that they take my phone, delete the photos, and force me to move my car. She was waving her press card around as if it were a police badge. The security guards gave each other a look that clearly said, "Really?" They looked at me, then at the clearly displayed disabled badge, then at her. After a moment, they calmly informed her that I was doing absolutely nothing wrong. I was parked in a designated disabled bay with the correct badge on display, and I had every right to be there. They also told her that I was well within my rights to take photos of someone who was harassing me. They explained that her behavior was inappropriate and that she needed to leave the area immediately. Her smug grin instantly disappeared. The confident look she had been wearing turned into something closer to a stunned expression, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She looked like one of those surprised cartoon characters. Then, completely losing her temper, she yelled an offensive word at all of us, stormed back to her car, and drove away in a huff. Just then, my partner arrived, being gently escorted by his nurse. When they saw what had just happened, we all, my partner, myself, the security guards, and the nurse, shared a laugh. It was one of those moments where everyone involved realized just how entitled some people can be, especially when they make assumptions about young people with disabilities. Edit. I think it's important to mention that to access the disabled car park at that hospital, I had to pass through a barrier with on-site security. They verified both the badge and my use of it before I was allowed entry. So from the start, I had followed all procedures correctly. Story 2. I don't even know how to begin this story, so I guess with a little background info. I had been working at a supermarket for a couple of years to earn some money while studying, but the managers were horrible. Especially one guy. He is a bit younger than me, but since he is a suck-up, he got promoted to a higher function. He is the reason I left the job. So now on to the actual story. I came to the store on a Wednesday morning to hand in my 4 weeks' notice. But when I got there, my colleague was working the checkouts and the customer service by herself. The manager was handling the safe, so she couldn't come and help, and we had to wait for another colleague to finish the unloading of the truck. So, me being a great colleague, helped the only customer at the customer service to make sure she didn't have to wait for at least 10 minutes to get a pack of cigarettes. And just when I closed the customer service, Karen came around the corner. The customer service does have a little checkout for people with baskets, which Karen had. However, it was closed. And since I was off the clock and I had an appointment later that morning, I was not going to open that checkout for her. Mind you, I had been chatting with the other customer for a while, and around 8-10 minutes had gone by at that point. And since I was in my raincoat, which is not even close to the work attire, I thought she would understand the circumstances given the huge line at the other checkout. Okay, on to the actual conversation. Cast, me, Karen, nice lady, manager. Karen puts the closed sign in the magazine rack, opens up the exit and puts her stuff on the counter. She literally opens up the checkout herself. Me. Oh, I'm sorry, miss. This register is closed since I'm off the clock. My colleague asked me to help this lady real quick, since no one else could at the time. But there should be somewhere here in 2 minutes max to help you out. How dare you? I am a loyal customer, and you cannot treat me like this. I am a widow and have to do everything by myself. You are going to help me right now, and I will not take no for an answer. I have always worked for my boss without getting paid. Manager. Miss, if I may ask, what is the problem here? She won't help me. Nick lady, this nice girl just helped me get some cigarettes, since your colleague asked her to help me out, so I didn't have to wait for 15 minutes. Me. That's right. The checkout was closed, since I'm off the clock and only here to give you my 4 weeks' notice. She knew about this, was not a surprise. Well, miss, so sorry she couldn't help you, but I'm here now so I can help you. You need to get your workers under control. That little brat shouldn't have treated me like this. I am a loyal customer. Nice lady. Miss, she is off the clock, and the manager is checking you out right now. Can't you be a bit nicer to this young lady? Do not mess with me, you dumb witch, and do not get involved. I'll make your life miserable. Manager. Miss, please stop insulting my coworker and the lady right here. They did nothing wrong. If you say one more bad thing, I will not help you any further, and you can leave without your groceries. The customer left without saying anything else, and the manager, nice lady, and I had a great laugh afterwards. Another fun fact. This woman has been a Karen for at least 15 years. My parents have a hedge in their back garden, which was always maintained by my granddad. Apparently, Karen lives in the same neighborhood and stopped by to ask my mom about the electric hedge trimmer, and if my mom could trim her hedge. When my mom told her it was being maintained by her father-in-law, she called her a lying witch, and also told the story of her deceased husband and how she can't do it herself. And I ran into her last week. She gave me the dirtiest look I've ever gotten. It was hilarious. Story 3. I was once fixing a friend's phone at a coffee shop, specifically a Starbucks. We both had drinks, and hers was still sitting on the table. She had stepped out briefly to grab something I needed in order to continue working on the phone. Then, an incredibly entitled person marched over and insisted that they absolutely had to sit right there. For context, half of the phone and some tiny components were spread across the 2 seats on the bench. I calmly told them that the seat was already in use, and, in any case, there wasn't enough space. They responded with a sarcastic tone, saying something like, "Well, there's clearly no one here now," and then proceeded to sit down anyway. As if that wasn't enough, they moved their arms like they were about to sweep the tiny phone screws off the edge of the table. I quickly moved my arm to block them, all while still holding the miniature screwdriver I was using to work on the phone. We went back and forth in a tense exchange for a minute, and it became clear they weren't planning on backing off. But I wasn't finished working, and I certainly wasn't going to move either. Then, unbelievably, this person picked up their phone and said, "I'm going to call the police if you don't stop." I couldn't help but laugh and said, "Fine, go right ahead." So they actually did it. While sitting there, staring me down, they suddenly put on this smug expression and loudly claimed, And then she threatened to stab me with a screwdriver? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I burst out laughing and said, "You know that's completely untrue. You tried to steal my friend's seat and even attempted to push her belongings onto the floor." After making the false accusation, they got up and went outside to wait for the police to arrive, while I calmly continued repairing the phone. Since I was nearly done anyway, it didn't take much longer. Just as I was wrapping up the repair, the police officers showed up. My friend and I were about to leave, but I paused for a moment and thought, "No, you know what?" So I walked over to the officers. I said, "I'm the person this individual was talking about. These are the tools I was working with, and this is the phone I was repairing when they tried to shove my friend's belongings to the ground. Do you need me to stick around?" One of the officers gave me a knowing look, almost like an eye roll, as if to say, "We're familiar with this person," and simply replied, "No, you're all good." So we left without any issue. What's truly wild is that a few years later, I stumbled upon a post in a local housing group online. The post described behavior exactly like what I had experienced and even worse. People were warning others not to rent to this individual, stating they had a pattern of changing locks on roommates, throwing out others' belongings, and generally causing chaos. The post even included a photo, and the person pictured looked exactly like the individual from the coffee shop. Is it necessarily the same person? I can't say with absolute certainty, but given the behavior and the timing, it sure seems more than likely. Story 4. Entitled "Elderly Man Shoves Woman in Store Line and Berates Cashier Before Storming Off." This happened last October 1st, the morning of my daughter's wedding. Had I not been in a hurry to get to the venue, things might have played out differently. I will never know. I was there to buy distilled water for the steamer needed to prepare her dress and the bridesmaids' dresses. Time was of the essence. I was patiently waiting in line, with an elderly couple finishing up in front of me. The woman was standing in front of the credit card payment machine, and the cart was positioned behind her. Her husband was at the end of the cart, bagging groceries. The cashier mentioned she would bag his items, and he cheerfully replied that he had done it for years as part of his job and didn't mind. His wife laughed and said he liked helping out. I was in line, as I mentioned, and I had my debit card ready in my hand. I smiled and joined in on the conversation. I tend to talk with my hands, so as we were all chatting, I was waving my right hand in the air. My hand was visible the entire time. Suddenly, I was shoved hard from behind. I was pushed into the little old lady, and she, in turn, pushed the cart into her husband. My first thought was that someone had tripped and fallen into me. I recovered and looked behind me to see this elderly man, hair sticking straight up, wearing a mask below his nose, glaring at me while slamming items onto the conveyor belt. The conversation went like this. Me, can I help you? Elderly man, I shoved you because you shoved her, and I'm not about to let you shove me, so I beat you to the punch. Ha ha ha. He is yelling this at me, pulling his mask down and leaning into my face full. I could feel myself getting hot all over. I don't like confrontation, but he had actually hurt my shoulder. I have fibromyalgia, and even a simple hug can be excruciating. Meanwhile, the older couple in front of me just hurried out of there. I never got to apologize to the woman or her husband. Me, I didn't touch her. Meanwhile, the cashier was ignoring this and quietly ringing up my distilled water. Elderly man, I saw you shove her, so I beat you to the punch. You people today are all the same. Then he gestured toward my gallon of distilled water. Have you ever heard of a faucet? You are what's wrong with the world. Drinking fancy water when you can drink out of a hose. You are ridiculous. He kept yelling at me, but I just shut down and could hear the sound without being able to make out the words. I think I went into mild shock. I wanted to scream at this man and defend myself, but at the same time, I kept thinking, why should I have to defend why I'm buying a gallon of distilled water? He shoved me and had absolutely no right to. I thought maybe the cashier would say, "Hey sir, settle down," or something. She said nothing. I was robotically swiping my debit card and just thinking, I have to get to my daughter. She gets married today. I have to get to my daughter. She is waiting. I have to get to my daughter. I grabbed my water and made a hasty exit. As I was leaving, I heard him say to the cashier, "Where did you get that shirt? It's awful. I've seen better shirts in the trash. Do you know how silly you look?" She replied, "I like this shirt. I'm ready for Halloween." It was a shirt with the upper part of a skeleton printed on it, ribs, sternum, and so on. He just kept going on, and she continued to ignore him. It was then that I realized this might be a disturbed, possibly confused elderly man. But even so, I just needed to get to my car. I was on the verge of tears, which tends to happen when I get angry. I got to my car, locked the doors, and began to shake. Then I couldn't stop. I burst into tears and shook uncontrollably for about 5 minutes. That's when it hit me. I was assaulted. I had been assaulted, and I did nothing. I froze. I was victimized mildly. Yes, but still, I cannot imagine how others, especially women, recover from more severe assaults. I now have a deep respect for those who can. My shoulder was burning with pain. Not a single employee in that store came to my defense. I drove to my daughter's venue, still in shock. Later, after the wedding hours afterward, I was in the shower. My husband came in, and I had a bruise the size of a tennis ball on my left shoulder. He noticed and asked about it. When I explained, a wave of white-hot rage passed through him. My husband is a large, protective man, and he would have never allowed that person to treat me that way. Had he been there, we most likely would have been delayed by law enforcement, so I'm grateful that didn't happen. I think about it all the time. I wish I had defended myself. I wish the cashier had called security. I wish I hadn't crawled inside myself and shut down the way I did. To anyone who has survived assault, you are brave. You matter. You did not deserve it. You are a survivor. Mine was a rough shove, and I still shake when I think about it. Story 5. I'm a ranger at a park that's very popular for outdoor picnicking and gatherings. Several of our picnic shelters are available for reservations, while others are always on a first-come, first-served basis. Of course, until the group who paid for the reservation shows up, part of my job is to make sure that no one else tries to claim the shelter as their own. One busy Saturday morning, I had to intervene when some random folks started to gather at Shelter 2, which was reserved for a person named Susie Smith. I directed them to another available area before they got too settled in. I did a lap of the park, assisted with some camping logistics, and then passed by Shelter 2 again. A new group was setting up now, a huge affair. Several dozen people were involved. They had multiple coolers, food warmer trays, several large bags of charcoal, outdoor games, the whole setup. I learned that they were also not part of Susie Smith's party, and I attempted to redirect them to another area. However, the gentleman in charge wanted to argue. He explained that he was the pastor of a church group, and they needed a large space like that particular shelter. I explained the reservation system to him and pointed out the sign in front of the shelter in case he had missed it. Then he made the unfortunate choice to fabricate a story. I truly dislike dishonesty. The man claimed that he had spoken to Susie Smith and her party, and that she was finished using the shelter for the day. According to him, Susie herself had given his church the go-ahead to take over the shelter. I explained that this seemed unlikely, as we had not yet heard from Miss Smith. If anything, the people he had spoken to were probably the earlier group who had also been asked to leave Shelter 2, as it wasn't their reservation either. He denied this and continued to insist that he had permission to use the shelter. Now that he knew Susie's name, he kept repeating it, as though they were long-time friends. That gave me an idea. "All right, sir," I said. "I'm not going to argue with a pastor or deprive a church group of the best picnic spot in the park. I'm sure that you're telling me the truth, so go ahead and set up and enjoy the space." He smiled, believing that he had won. "But if Susie Smith and her party show up and your group is occupying the shelter, that's going to be a problem. It will take quite a while for you to pack everything up and make way for the group that actually paid for the space. At that point, We would have to ask your group to pack up and leave the park for the rest of the day. I continued. If you're not completely confident that this space is truly yours, you might want to find another area to barbecue. He became frustrated and argued that I wasn't being fair. He said there was no reason to remove his entire group. I agree, sir, I replied. I'm sure that a good, respectful pastor of a church would never lie to me or attempt to take something someone else has paid for. And the only reason I'd ask you to leave would be if you misled me. So go ahead and enjoy. Unless, of course, there's a reason you shouldn't. With that, I hopped in my cart and drove away. A few minutes later, I saw that Shelter 2 was empty, and his group had relocated to the last available picnic table in the furthest corner of the park. Soon after, Miss Smith called to reschedule her reservation, as her group would be unable to make it out that day. I found the family who had first attempted to set up at the shelter and let them know it had become available. They were lovely people. Story 6. Have you ever had to deal with a person who holds an ongoing grudge against you? I have, and let me tell you, it's not a pleasant experience. Never in my life have I had to deal with someone so obsessed with me that they want me off the internet, or even worse, gone entirely. His behavior is so immature, it's just absurd, especially considering he's an adult. This is my story of dealing with an entitled man I'll refer to as Ken. Sit tight, everyone, because this is going to be a long one. I've known Ken for a very long time. I met him back on an art website called DeviantArt sometime in the early 2010s. And let me tell you, he is quite the character. All he ever does is make a complete mockery of himself online. And as time goes by, he only gets worse. I've never met the man in person, and frankly, I never want to. I used to be friends with him online until I noticed how drastically his behavior changed. What happened was that I received a private message from him warning me to watch out for this person, they're a jerk. At first, I was confused. Then he replied to my comment where I had wished him a happy birthday, saying something like, "Why would you ever talk to this lowlife? The only thing he's good at is stealing from others." That was the moment I had enough. I defended my friend and told Ken to back off because none of the accusations were true. Ken then responded, "Okay, dummy, believe that liar. See if I ever help a cheap person like you again." That was when we cut ties. But unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. After our friendship ended, I'd occasionally find out that he was spreading false information about me online. He made up lies about things I never did. And mind you, he's the one constantly creating drama. Once, he even tried to report a video I made for no legitimate reason. Luckily, the video remained untouched. Another time, he falsely accused people of stealing model parts from other sources without providing any evidence. This man is nothing but a troublemaker. Other people have called him out, too. He's also extremely hypocritical. For instance, he once claimed that pre-rendered art isn't real art, yet he uses a 3D animation software to render images. Another time, he said anyone who makes 3D models using any program is a fraud, even though he does the same himself. That kind of logic makes no sense. To make matters worse, he even profits illegally off models made by others or ripped from video games. For example, he tried selling textures from a well-known horror game for a few dollars. How he hasn't been sued yet is beyond me. On top of that, he attempted to distribute a voice bank originally made for a vocal synthesizer program called Vocaloid to a different software, which is strictly against the terms of service. When people found out, they called him out on Twitter and even contacted the company that owns the voice bank. Ken tried to defend himself using an email from the voice provider's representative, which merely said he needed to contact her for permission. And guess what? He still continues, only now he doesn't distribute the files openly. You'd think he would have learned by now, but no, he hasn't. That's why he remains infamous. One thing that really bothers people is online ban evasion, creating new accounts after being banned. Ken has been doing this repeatedly since his original account was banned in 2017 for harassment. He keeps coming back with different profiles and repeating the same behavior. but it's easy to tell it's him. He never learns from his mistakes. Every time he returns, he starts from scratch, only to get banned again within minutes. He harasses others, not just me, and even got suspended from another art platform multiple times with suspensions ranging from a day to a month. There's a popular figure in the 3D modeling community who had his work stolen by Ken. This modeler had ported a model from a game into another program, and when Ken used it without permission, the modeler told him to remove it or face legal action. I saw this coming a mile away. Ken didn't even wait for a response before assuming ownership. He had the nerve to claim the modeler didn't hold the copyright. That's ridiculous. If someone creates something, it's their intellectual property. But because Ken is so arrogant, he ignored this. Other fans supported the modeler and called Ken out on Twitter as well. To make matters worse, Ken tweeted out activation keys for a game the modeler had developed and encouraged people to pirate it instead of supporting the developer. Promoting piracy is not only unethical, it's illegal. He even attempted to share the model on a file hosting site, but thankfully it was removed for copyright violation. Now, let's talk about Ken's most targeted victim. Drumroll, please. It's me, of course. Ken really dislikes me a lot. No matter what I do, he's always trying to get me into trouble. He refuses to mind his own business. Here's a list of things he falsely accuses me of: stealing, stalking, impersonation, abuse, trolling, and the list goes on. Ever since I started making videos about him starting in 2015, then again in 2019, I've gained a lot of support, but Ken didn't like that one bit. He would go on rants and complain on Twitter about how he wanted me banned from YouTube for harassment and other things I never did. I posted a 2-part video in September and October last year, and that's when he lost it. This man cannot handle criticism. Instead of dealing with it like an adult, he spams angry tweets every month. Every single month. And how old is he? It's honestly embarrassing. I remember he falsely reported 3 of my videos last year, which resulted in 2 copyright strikes. 2 of the videos were from 2015. His own channel was created 2 years later, so I don't understand how my older videos were taken down due to his reports. The 3rd strike was on a teaser video I uploaded in August last year. I was terrified that I would lose my channel, all because he refused to take responsibility for his actions. I filed counter notifications, but due to how broken YouTube's system can be, they didn't process them. Only one of the videos got reinstated in January. I then made another video documenting his continued behavior, including his comment wishing that I catch a virus and pass away. That crossed a serious line. I emailed him, asking him to leave me alone or I'd report him. Maybe that wasn't the best idea. Ken responded by saying, "Thanks. I'll forward your threat to Google. Enjoy the last days of your account. I won't miss you one bit." He even posted my email address on Twitter. That was completely uncalled for. It didn't stop there. He tried to involve the police, all because he couldn't handle being criticized. That's not how things work. Pressing charges for criticism only makes you look worse. He's no better on Twitter. Even if I don't tag him, he'll respond to tweets that mention me, spreading negativity. Most people don't even know who he's talking about and want no part in it. It's clear he doesn't know when to stay in his lane. He and I already have each other blocked. Even if I'm not mentioned, he'll randomly respond to a tweet from YouTube and go into a tantrum about how they failed to deplatform me. On a scale of 1 to 10, his level of toxicity is far beyond a 10. 2 months later, he found me on Facebook and began speaking poorly about me to my family, claiming that I was a terrible person. Seriously, can't he just mind his business for once? How did I know he found me there? My mother showed me his comments on my old post photos of myself or me with friends. He even invaded my privacy and revealed my personal information, and he calls me the stalker. That's beyond disturbing. This wasn't the first time he violated my privacy. I reported him on DeviantArt, Twitter, and YouTube. But what did Facebook do about it? Absolutely nothing. Even after I reported his page, they took no action. Because of his actions, I had to make most of my accounts private. And let's not forget one of the worst things he did. He made a tweet that said, "A person of color like him deserves to be on death row." I sincerely hope he doesn't have any friends who are part of the black community. On top of that, he filed yet another false copyright strike against me. This time, it was for a cover of a song. He thought he could get away with falsely reporting a video that wasn't even about him. I filed a counter notification, and the video was reinstated 2 weeks later. He should really reconsider his actions before consequences catch up with him. To make things worse, back on DeviantArt, he created a fake account pretending to be me. He did this out of spite after his sock puppet account was temporarily suspended. How did I find out? A friend messaged me on Discord, and the conversation went like this. "What is this?" they asked, linking to the fake account. "Oh no. This wasn't you, right?" "Of course not. It's an imposter." I knew it. A faker. It quickly became clear who was behind the fake account. I should have known. It's that entitled Ken. He made that? Apparently, yes. I can't believe it. That little nuisance. Yeah, he was mad. So was I. I sent Ken a private message telling him to stop and deactivate the account, or I would report him. His reply: "Gonna have to report you. Troll. XD typical. Do you know why he did this? He wanted me to delete my post about him, apologize, and turn myself in. That's never going to happen." So, I reported that fake account along with his suspended one, and they were both banned the next day. The following month, he made another post criticizing my modeling work. It was unnecessary and full of baseless accusations. He claimed I stole various assets for my model and that it was poorly made. He's so uninformed he can't tell the difference between a model edit and one made entirely from scratch. And not only that it was a work in progress. Imagine showcasing your work like anyone else, and someone accuses you of cheating, regardless of how far along your project is. That's the kind of negativity Ken brings. I also want to mention something from 2018. He once wrote a blog post on Amino claiming he wanted to call in a special weapons and tactics team on me. That's extremely serious. Swatting is a criminal act that can land someone in jail for endangering innocent lives. If that had really happened, I might not be here to share this story. Even now, he continues to target me no matter what platform I'm on. My most recent video about him was just a week ago, but that didn't stop him. He still tries to silence me just for telling the truth. The reality is, he's not winning anything. He may be in his late 20s, but he behaves like a child. Recently, I discovered that a few YouTube accounts have been trolling him, some even pretending to be him. And who does he blame? Of all the people, he points the finger at me. I have no association with those trolls, but I have to admit, it was a little funny to see him getting a taste of his own medicine. Finally, he still criticizes me for having a character that he claims is a rip-off of another one, specifically, a Vocaloid character. Why? Because I recolored a model back in 2012 to represent my persona, and I was still new to animating and not very experienced in modeling. And just a few weeks ago, he made a video bringing this up again, saying I was copying someone else. It's absurd. Everyone recolors models at some point. He does it too. Even if I design my own original character, he'd still accuse me of copying. That's all he sees. Once a hypocrite, always a hypocrite. So, yeah, that was my experience dealing with the entitled Ken. You see how much nonsense I've had to endure all this time? It's nearly impossible to reason with someone who's determined to hold a grudge forever.